So let's call the meeting of the Board of Public Works to order on July 27th, 2023. Would you please call the roll? Maybe Patty's going to do that.
Sure. Commissioner Moriarty?
Here.
Commissioner Schoeneman?
Here.
Commissioner Lemon? Here. Mayor Donches?
Here. Thank you. First item is a motion to approve the agenda. Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to approve the agenda as submitted. There is also a non-public change, but...
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Next is motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Commissioner Schoeneman.
I move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of June 22nd, 2023.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We now have public comment, and our first item there is the Nashua Lions are going to, thank you very much, award the Employee of the Year. We have Ed Leicius, Martha Ackerman, Aaron Hendrickson, Frida. I don't know who's going to speak, but it is your 100th anniversary, right?
It is. Thank you,
So,
Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission.
Thank you for coming.
Several years ago, Nick Caggiano was a member of the club.
Can you please sit at the table?
Oh,
Thanks. Gotta hear you.
Several years ago, Nick Caggiano was a member of the club, and we recognized other city agencies and departments, and Nick suggested including Public Works. And it was a great suggestion, and we ran with it, and I believe this would be our third presentation to the Public Works Employee of the Year. And we are celebrating 100 years in the city, and it's an exciting time. We have a big event at the end of September, and we're finally pleased to be able to be here to present this year's recipient. And Mayor, would you like to tell us a little bit about Jeff and why we're recognizing him?
Well, we're very happy that you've chosen Jeff LaFleur, because he has been with the city and been dedicated to our citizens for 25 years. And he's been a hard worker, very dedicated, and achieved very much for the city over this period of time. One of his major accomplishments is he led the efforts to license Phase 3 and then Phase 4 of the landfill, which have taken a landfill that would otherwise would be nearly done, and extended its life by 40 to 50 years, which will be a great benefit to the Nashua community in years to come. He's also been a leader, a teacher, a mentor to many, many people in the division, and certainly those who are at the landfill. He did work his way up. He started as a temp, summer temp, and then he probably regrets leaving that job. Then he became a collection equipment operator and did that for 5 years. And he helped to initiate, pioneer the automatic collection, the arm collection that we have, rather than having 3 people on the truck. Now we have one, and we avoid a lot of injuries by doing that. More efficiency as well, so thank you very much there. And he also, then he became a foreman. He continued to work his way up. He worked on at the landfill, helped with, again, the licensing and all of the supervision there. And he was part of the group that put together a 10-year, this is in 2012, he put together a 10-year plan for truck replacement, which served the city very well. And he implemented the use of the new CNG trucks for the city. Those are saving about 40% of the energy necessary to power those trucks. So as you can see, over the past 25 years, he's been a very important part of the Division of Public Works, and therefore is very deserving of the recognition that the Lions Club is giving him.
Well, I can also say that when I was community policing coordinator, that he, along with the other division directors at the time, were very, very helpful to me on the various issues that would come up at Crime Watch meetings and/or just things we were doing in general. So I concur, great selection. And if we could interrupt your meeting long enough to get a group picture, I'd like our president,
great.
Aaron, and our first vice president, Martha, to make the presentation along with you and the commission to Jeff. Please.
Okay, great. Thank you. Where are we going to do this? Where do you want
Right
to?
over there. No,
Want me to take the picture?
no, it's okay, Lisa. This is their day. I'm the man behind the curtain. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you to the Lions Club, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome anytime. Any other members of the public wish to address the Board of Public Works? We also, in addition to the board, I see we have Alderwoman Trish Klee here. I don't know if we have any other members of the Board of Aldermen. Thank you for coming. If there are no other if there are no other public comments, we go to solid waste. Item A, Commissioner Lemon.
I motion to approve change order number 2 to the contract with Charter Contracting Company, LLC, in the amount not to exceed $50,000 for installation of a downshoot funding through Department 168 Solid Waste Fund Bond Activity Zigzag.
And of course, this is Mr. LaFleur.
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste. Yes, we're doing a temporary cap, which is called the Zigzag right now out in the landfill. And with the astronomical rains that we've been having, we've been noticing a lot more runoff than typical. So we decided to do a field change order and do a downshoot, which will run stormwater off of our landfill instead of letting it leach into our landfill. So these are the costs to some added, materials and labor that's needed to do this. So we found it prudent to do something like this to help shut off the stormwaters.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now we move on to the wastewater department. Item A, Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to approve the user warrants as presented.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, Commissioner Shoneman.
I move to approve the award of design phase services of the fire alarm upgrade project to Vertex Companies LLC from Syosset, New York, in the amount of $93,500. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund Wastewater, Activity Fire Alarm Upgrade.
Mr. Boucher.
Dave Boucher, wastewater superintendent. The wastewater facility has an aged fire alarm system. It was installed around 30 years ago. We've made repairs over the years, but some parts are getting hard to get. It also doesn't have an addressable system to it, which means when the fire department shows up, they can't really pinpoint where in the facility the problem is. Recently, we've been having a lot of visits from the fire department, a lot of false alarms, which I'm sure is costing a bit of money. So we put out an RFQ to do the design phase services to come up with a good system for our facility. We interviewed Vertex, the Vertex company, checked references, and they're a reputable company. We'd like to use them for the design phase services.
All right. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Moriarty.
What is your take that there's no other bids on this? I hate to approve something with just a solo bid. It just seems.
I know there was no, and we reached out to several companies,
Oh, you did reach out
Yeah.
to, okay.
And the trouble is that there's a lot of companies that do all the repairs and stuff, but there's a few companies that actually design them in the facilities, in this region anyway. So it surprised me too.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Can you, I know this is not about the construction, about the design, but can you give me an idea of the scope of the work that's going to cost $1 million to $1.5 million?
So that would be the total project. And that is because the facility is multiple buildings throughout the facility, you cannot do wireless fire alarm systems, so a lot of it's underground piping that would have to be installed in some of our buildings that don't currently have systems. And it is a catacomb of old buildings and new buildings that have to be reached. So it's not just in one building, it's throughout the entire facility. So it's construction-wise, and there's a lot of rooms, individual rooms as well, that have to receive. Some will receive smoke detector systems, lighted alarms, horns. It all depends on the, how occupied the place is and what type of equipment. If you want an early alarm system and if you have a section of the facility that has expensive assets in it and you want to be alarmed early, you know, the alarm can go off, sense a certain temperature in the room sooner than later to alarm you. So it's expensive equipment in that sense. But I think just the overall construction, just getting from room to room, because everything has to be wired in versus wireless.
And this is it also a fire suppression system, or is it just?
No, we
detection?
do have a fire sprinkler system, which it has to marry into this fire sprinkler system as well. So the fire sprinkler system is already in place. So this is the detection system, which is independent, somewhat independent. So if it does go off, it does trigger there's two mechanisms that trigger the sprinkler system. Heat in the room, which would set off the sprinkler heads. But there's also another facet, which in some of the rooms, the fire alarm system can trigger the sprinkler system. So that has to be married in.
I'll move that to the end. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Motion passes. Next item, item C, Commissioner Lemon.
The motion is to approve Amendment 4 in the amount of $267,700 to extend the contract for 3 years with Flow Assessment of Auburn, New Hampshire for the combined sewer overflow and interceptor monitoring. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Wastewater Account Classification 53, Professional Services.
Dave Boucher, wastewater superintendent. We have 11 flow meters throughout the city at our combined sewer overflow sites. We also have 4 meters in our interceptor system to monitor flows there. We also have 3 rain gauges around the facility in different parts of the city. So this company monitors all those. When we have discharges, CSO discharges, we get live feedback that it's been activated and when it shuts down. This company takes all that data, reports all the flows to us every month so we can report them to the EPA and DES for regulatory purposes. We've had good luck with this company. We'd like to continue using their services, and this is a 3-year contract.
Okay. Anyone? Commissioner Moriarty?
Yeah, I was just wondering, the previous contract, how does it compare price-wise? Did they jump it?
It did have an increase, a slight increase, but also the last contract, they forgot to add in the rain gauges, so we weren't paying for the rain gauges. Now we are. But they said they're not going to backtrack us, there's an error on their hand.
Thank you.
It's not that much of a jump. I forgot what the percentage is, but it's not that much of a jump.
All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're on to Parks and Recreation. Item A, Commissioner Moriarty.
The motion is to approve the purchase and installation of a new playground structure and playground equipment for Sandy Pond with a total cost of $29,280 pursuant to Sourcewell contract number 010521. Funding will be through Department 184 Urban Programs, Fund, Grant, Activity, CDBG, Sandy Pond.
Good evening, everyone. Brian Conant, Superintendent of Parks and Recreation. The current playground right now at Sandy Pond consists of some swing sets that are in good shape, a slide that's in pretty good shape, an octagon climber. that's in pretty good shape and some very old seesaws. This climber that I'm proposing right now would just replace the seesaws at the current playground that we have. I think it's going to be a great addition, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Schoeneman.
$30,000 for a climber?
Yep. Playground equipment is very expensive, so.
It's one of those very large spider web type
Yeah.
structures.
I see the
You should have
Yeah.
a picture of it, right?
Yeah, there was a picture.
Very popular with kids.
And that includes the equipment and the installation and the disposal of the old seesaws, but my gosh, $30,000? That is astronomical.
When we put in the slide at Groby Park, it was just a small, not a very large slide, and that was, what, 14,000?
Replacement slide.
The replacement slide,
At
yeah.
Roby, it was 14 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, playground equipment is really expensive.
There.
Commissioner Moriarty.
If I read this correctly, Superintendent, the funding is not coming from our
Operating,
budget.
that's right.
It's completely from the grant
You are
grant funding.
completely correct,
Correct.
Commissioner
All right.
Moriarty.
So, put the taxpayers at ease a little bit.
Or grant money still comes from somewhere.
Yes, it does.
Somebody pays for it.
All right, well, any other questions for the superintendent on this?
I have a question about Sandy Pond.
Yes, go ahead.
Is the splash pad working or not?
It is.
It is,
It's
okay.
been off and on and off and on. I'm pretty sure we've got it figured out. We had to replace the fuse box and some breakers in there that are brand new, and a starter relay. So it's been operating for the last 2 days, and I haven't gotten a complaint yet, so.
Yeah, I noticed that that's one thing people complain about.
Yes.
Really fast.
You are correct, Commissioner Lemon.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
Motion passes. Now, we're on to the engineering department. The first item is the Nashua Regional Planning Commission pedestrian infrastructure assessment. Now, wait, hold it. That's going to take a while. So we do have a number of people waiting on quicker items. So if the board doesn't object, we could move to take these other items and then return to the Regional Planning Commission, if you don't mind.
Whenever the tornadoes are coming, that's what I'm at.
All right. So we will move that down to the bottom of engineering. Item B is informational item, street opening permits issued. Anybody have any questions about that? If not, we'll go to item C, which you see, which is, and I will ask Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to approve the sewer service permits and fees as submitted.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, item D, Commissioner Schoeneman.
I move to approve poll license petitions as listed in the staff report.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item E, Commissioner Lemon.
Motion is to approve a drain layers license for AMC Excavating LLC of Hudson, New Hampshire, and authorize the Division of Public Works to temporarily suspend the license if work is found to be unsatisfactory during an initial 6-month probationary period.
Any comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item F, Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to approve change order 1 for the 2023 paving program. Contract 1 to Continental Paving, Inc. of Londonderry, New Hampshire, in an amount not to exceed $132,000, $1,000,000.50. Funding through Department 160 Administration and Engineering, Fund Bond Activity Paving.
Mr. Hudson?
Good afternoon, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. So this is a change order as noted to Continental Paving's contract. We issued 2 contracts this year. They had one of them. This is for some work we didn't anticipate, some drainage work on Main Street. We're going to be paving Main Street this year. We need to make some drainage repairs before we do that. We found that needed through some videoing of the pipes. And then under their recommendation, we're going to substitute the pavement for a high-strength pavement. They thought that was important due to the turning volumes of traffic and going down the hill by Water Street there. That would be important. So that requires a little different mix design, and so there's a little additional expense for that. And then also just the number of casting adjustments that we're doing this year is running ahead of where we anticipated, so we need to make an adjustment for that. So I'd be happy to address any questions.
All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item G, Commissioner Shoneman.
I move to consider the retroactive hardship request from Teen Challenge New England Incorporated for excavating at 36 Toll Street to install a fire service water main and further to waive the mill and overlay requirement due to financial hardship.
And we have a couple of people here to address that.
Would you be, I'll just briefly introduce
Yes.
it, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. So 36 Toll Street, they needed to install a water line, I think for fire service, they can clarify. The engineering issued a permit for that work. We actually did that in error because we should have come before you for a hardship waiver, and we did not do that. The moratorium was close to expiring, and that was missed by a staff member that no longer works here, but at any rate, the permit was issued. They put the service in, they did the trench repair. Since we didn't flag it as a moratorium, I don't think they understood that at the time. So before you tonight, they're here to speak to the fact they're requesting, well, we're retroactively requesting a moratorium waiver approval, but then also to waive the mill and inlay portion of the restoration. The moratorium has since expired. It expired last fall, and the work was done last summer. So above and beyond that, I just asked them to speak to that request and the hardship reasoning for not doing the full restoration. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Curtis. I'm the president of this. Actually, just briefly, it's an update to it's not the Teen Challenge. The organization is actually the Southern New Hampshire Rescue Mission. We purchased the property from Teen Challenge and renovated the property. The Hope Center for Women, its use right now is for a homeless shelter for females. Tonight we'll be housing 14 females, getting them off the street, so we're proud that Hope Center opened. At the time of the renovation, I didn't understand the particulars around the moratorium, and certainly I would have waited 2 more months in order for us to get into that time frame to avoid the $8,500 expense in the repaving or the patchwork. And $8,500 to our nonprofit organization is pretty significant in terms of the 2 shelters that we operate in the city of Nashua. So I think the summary is accurate. The picture, I think, is offered in terms of the patchwork that was done, which was pretty good. So that's the request that we have. Any comments or any questions?
Commissioners? Comments, questions? What is your overall capacity? 14 women tonight, but I think your capacity is greater than that.
It's about 25 total, including the programs that we offer, which are longer term for women.
All right, thank you. Anyone?
Just a
Commissioner
question,
Moriarty.
thank you, Mayor. The question on the permitting, Mr. Hudson. So they come to the engineering department and that app is filled out there and then it goes through the process through your department? Okay.
Correct, yes.
And it was just missed?
Yeah, it was just missed. I mean, the process for reviewing a permit, we have a moratorium GIS layer. So you get a permit in, you see what street address it is, you check it against that. If it's a moratorium, then obviously we would have to come to the board first, get that waiver approval, and then allow them to do the work, and then we track that through the final restoration. So for whatever reason that was missed, that that request didn't come to you. You didn't have an opportunity to approve it ahead of time, and I do apologize for that. And also, consequently, the applicant wasn't aware of that either, because as noted, they could have waited a few months, and then they wouldn't have had to do that. So had they done that, we'd be kind of in the same situation we're in now, where the patch is what, they did the required work for the patch that they would be required to do, not in a moratorium. So we would have been in the same scenario as we are currently in now. That's why we understand the request.
All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item H, Commissioner Lemon.
The motion is to consider the hardship request from Prunia and Perlman, PA, on behalf of Hitesh Punjabi to excavate to install a drainage system at 14B Railroad Square in Canal Street.
Again, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. I'll briefly start it off here, and then Attorney Perlman and the applicant can speak to it. Fairly unique situation. Business changing use came through. There's this building, there's actually a unique situation where the catch basins in the street drain through the basement of the building out towards the railroad and the river. We don't know the full history of that. It might have been, due to the railroad wanting to capture that water way back when. We don't have many of those situations where water flows through basements. So the applicant tonight, and can speak to it more, has offered to put in drainage piping to alleviate that situation. And so we support the request because it's work that should be done to address that, but I'll let them speak more to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Good afternoon. My name is Andy Perlman of Prunia and Perlman, attorney here in Nashua. Sitting with me is Hitesh Punjabi, the tenant of 14B Railroad Square. We have a pretty dire situation. This summer has been very wet, and every time every time we have a hard rain, the catch basins do their job by getting the water out of the street, but then they dump it right into our basement, right? And so Hitesh, when he was doing his renovations starting last summer, when he started taking out the floor, they saw a foot or more of water in the basement of this Railroad Square building. And so it took some time to investigate. We ran some cameras through the pipes, and we found that these catch basins are leaking directly into the basement. And so you have the plans from Keach Nordstrom that we believe will solve the problem. The plans are being reviewed and vetted by Dan's department. And so the hardship is pretty severe to Hitesh. He can't open his business. He can't progress with his renovations of the building for his retail shop until this gets addressed. And we're looking for two things: for the hardship moratorium, and secondly, for the paving to be limited to the parking spaces, because we're really just going to be working in the sidewalk, replacing the sidewalk, and then to the extent necessary, the paving would be redone along the parking spaces along the curb line. So that's the request to the board. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Anyone? Commissioner Moriarty.
I was just wondering the whole process. So was it faulty? Did it break, or it's just so much rain that it over?
That's the way it was constructed way back when, and we've tried to research the history of it, and the best we can tell it was that it used to be a railroad, owned by the railroad, and for whatever reason, that's the configuration they implemented. The improvement is to basically rip up the sidewalk, run the drainage pipe along under the sidewalk, connect into another drainage line that does outlet to the river, and then tie the catch basins into that, and then redo the sidewalk. So it's work that needs to be done, and they've designed, they did a lot of the investigation and have proposed this repair, and we agree that it's appropriate to do because we have a lot of pipes. Not a lot of pipes, but we do have locations where pipes run under buildings. We try to eliminate those, but in this case, it actually goes right through the basement, almost in an open channel, and it floods the basement. So it's a bad situation that needs to be addressed.
What is 14B?
It's headliners, Portland Pie,
Okay.
Kathleen Newlands.
What are you going to do there?
Opening a smoke shop.
All right, any other questions, comments?
What is, I'm sorry,
Commissioner Schoen.
what is the extent of the cutting into Canal Street? It wasn't clear from the drawings how much is being,
It's a good question. So there's actually, there's a fiber optic communication duct that runs, or a communication duct, I don't know if it's fiber optic, but it runs along the curb line. So they're gonna have, that's why the pipe is going under the sidewalk instead of out in the street. So they're gonna do the pipe, they're gonna have to do whatever they're gonna do to the catch basins, tie that in. But then the request is to, instead of milling the whole width of Canal Street, just to mill the width along the parking lane, along the curb line there, instead of extending into the street. That we're confident will cover all the work that's proposed to be done. Since we're not tying any drainage pipes out into Canal Street, that seems to make sense. We've done that in other cases where we try to limit the work to the edge of the road if all we're doing is work along the edge of the road. There's another case later tonight you'll hear for a similar request, but that's the request, to limit it to the parking lane. The mill and inlay pavement, basically, to limit that to the width of the parking lane along the curb.
so for the most part, the patch that's going to go in afterwards is really going to be contained within those angled parking spaces, or
I think it's parallel spaces.
parallel spaces?
And yeah, so we'll get, basically there'll be new pavement there, there'll be new sidewalk, and there'll be new pipe that you can't see because it's underground, but, you know, it'll be, that's the extent of the work from the building out to the limit of the parking, basically.
I mean, just as another point, it just seems odd to me that all these years, and it's gotta be 100 years old, right, or more, and nobody's brought this up, that the owner of the building never addressed this, or it doesn't make any sense to me.
It had come up in the past, and actually we made them aware of it as they were going through the planning board process, because it had come up in the past, when a previous change of use was happening in Portland Pie, the issue came up. We'd done a little bit of a design, but it was the cost to make the repair, I guess, was viewed as prohibitive at the time, so it wasn't done. Portland Pie did their thing, and now they've come and gone, right? So it's work that they've designed, essentially the same sort of thing that we had envisioned and we would do someday, but hadn't done yet. So they're, you know, in a sense, they're helping address something that should have been addressed.
Absolutely. I agree.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.
Next item I, Commissioner Moriarty.
Motion is to consider the hardship request from Liberty Utilities to excavate in Ashland Street and Reservoir Street to complete a gas main replacement on Manchester Street.
Hey, Nate, introduce yourself, Nate. I'll let you have at this one and fill in as needed.
Nate Cody with Liberty Utilities, just looking to dig into a couple of moratorium streets to address replacing some cast iron pipe and assist the city ahead of some paving projects. Happy to take any questions.
So there are two items. This first one is work in Reservoir Street and Ashland Street to do main on where? On Manchester Street?
Manchester Street, yeah. Ashland Street, we may not even really get into the street, but we put it on there just in case, erring on the side of caution. Reservoir Street, I think we're about 50 feet into it to do our work. And then the other one was New Dunstable Road. That one's going to be about 150 feet.
Yeah, that's the next item in the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
All right, question, we're on item I. Questions, comments from the board? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have item J. Commissioner Commissioner Schoen.
It's the second one, New Dunstable.
I move to consider the hardship request from Liberty Utilities to excavate in New Dunstable Road to complete gas main replacement on New Dunstable Road and Joffrey Street.
Nate Cody with Liberty Utilities. Apologize, I jumped ahead on that one. That is the street, that's the 150 feet that we're requesting.
Where is New Dunstable, oh, sorry. Where is New Dunstable Road and Joffrey Street?
Nashua.
Yeah. Where in Nashua?
It's between Kinsley Street and West Hollis, and
Oh.
it kind of this diagonal street that runs east-west.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's over near the highway, but on the other side, the inside of the highway.
Right, correct.
Mr. Hudson, do you have anything to add on this?
No, I don't think so. Similar situation. They're trying to do work. Again, this is to support paving
Correct.
work that we plan to do. So they're kind of stuck in a situation. They're doing a piece that where we're going to pave, but it's tapping into locations that we already paved. And as we've indicated, going forward, we're trying to better identify those and pull the work outside of limits, so we don't have these situations in the future. But this is one that we do. So that's why the request is before you.
All right, anyone? Commissioner Schoen?
Once again, not an emergency and not a hardship. With a little bit of pre-planning, could have been taken care of in 2020. So I am not in favor of it.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes.
There you go.
Thanks.
Next, we have item K. Commissioner Lemon.
Motion is to consider the hardship request from Fieldstone Land Consultants, PLLC, on behalf of Via Ridge LLC to excavate on Ridge Road to complete off-site sidewalk and drainage installation for the Doucette Landing project.
So again, I'll introduce this, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. This project is moving through the planning board process. I think it's 80, what does it say in here, 83 units or something. Condominiumized development, but it's along Ridge Road. They did stub out the utilities for the development ahead of us paving Ridge Road. But as this came before the planning board in our review, we've requested that they do sidewalk along the edge of Ridge Road. They had set it off a few feet, but we really prefer to be curbing and drainage and then the sidewalk, so that's better protected from traffic, and we don't have that, small section of dirt that's grass never grows in and just puddles and, and gets dirt on the sidewalk and stuff. So this sidewalk will connect the development to a trail system, the existing development across the street. So this is, so they're here before you seeking approval to do something that the city staff and the planning board is asking for. The proposal is to put the sidewalk in and then, again, limit the milling to just along the edge of the roadway, the curb line, so that this work can be done while not impacting the roadway any more than they need to. And again, they stubbed out the utilities before, so there's no cut like that into the road where they'd have to mill 20 feet beyond the full width of the road. It's really work along the edge of the road. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Introduce yourself,
Sure.
please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chuck Ritchie with Fieldstone Land Consultants, representing Bay Ridge. As Mr. Hudson said, we were requested to install sidewalk and curbing along the road where previously we were proposing a small little 5-foot grass shoulder and the sidewalk at existing grade. In the discussion, they requested it, and we didn't have any issues with that, so we're coming here today to grant this waiver, hopefully to meet everyone's needs and improve the drainage.
And this is just on the frontage of your property?
Yes.
And how wide is the frontage?
This would be a total of roughly 780 feet, split approximately evenly on each side.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Schoen.
When was Ridge Road last paved?
2021, October of 2021, so 2 years ago. We did have a discussion with the applicant about you know, it's gonna take a while for this development to get built out, but right now we anticipate planning board will want these improvements so that, you know, as they build out and certificates of occupancy are granted, that those sidewalk systems are in place for the residents. So, I mean, there could be an alternate to wait another 3 years till the moratorium runs out. But to allow flexibility, especially if those features are desired sooner, I think the request is put before you for those reasons. To the credit of the applicant, they're here before the process is all done. Lots of times you go through a planning board process, and then by the time they get to you, they've got all their approvals and just need your approval. That's not the case. In this case, they're still working their way through the planning board process. They don't have final approval. I encourage them to come to the board and for these things that we're seeking, and that's why they're here.
Commissioner Schoenman.
Another question, it says conservation subdivision. What sort of housing is this that's being built?
Do you want to speak to that? It's like townhomes. It's just a condominiumized development. So there's one big lot for the development. There's common space, whatever, but
Right, they won't be individual lots, it'll be
they'll kind of look like individual
association.
homes, but it's a condo association on one lot.
Right.
Okay, market rate housing,
Yes. Yeah.
condominium.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but I'm assuming they fall under the inclusionary zoning requirements. I could be wrong, so don't quote me. So there may be some affordable as part of this. I don't remember the details.
But they're gonna take care of the drainage and make some improvements to the overall property.
Yes, they're gonna build, well, internal, it's gonna be like any development, they're gonna build, it's gonna be private roadway because it's condominium, but they're gonna build the roadways internal and drainage system, everything internal. This before you is just, you know, we've requested the work along the frontage within the right of way. And so that's what this is about, is enabling them to do what we're asking them to do. They said they're willing to do it, but they need the approval to do it in terms of the moratorium.
Anyone else?
But Mayor, I was just thinking this whole thing through, because we do a lot now with planning, you know, and the board back and forth. It'd be great if they were in-house here, you know, the planning department, you know, or we do so much, right? It's almost like the two could be interconnected. I don't know, I'm just throwing out thoughts there, but.
They're interconnected in the sense that I'm a voting member on the planning board. So in engineering, we do work closely with the planning. We do the plan reviews for developments that come through the planning board process. So we're pretty well connected. And again, we tried in this case. We had them stub out the utilities. At that point in time, we didn't really know what the development was going to be. But we stubbed out a sewer service, water service, gas, maybe gas, I can't remember. So we tried to get ahead of it, but then at the end of the day, because of the development, type of development was and how it was configured, it came to be that we wanted a sidewalk, and so we missed that part of it. But at least we're just talking about working along the edge of the road, not, you know, major cuts in the newly paved roadway for those utility tie-ins. So
I agree.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is item L. Commissioner Moriarty.
The motion is to consider the hardship request from Hayner Swenson, Inc. On behalf of Stabile Homes at Caldwell Road LLC to excavate in Caldwell Road and Forge Drive to install sewer, water, and gas services at residential lots 105-165, 105-166, and 105-167.
It's a good team here, so I'll just let them have at this one, I guess. So go for it.
Thanks, Mr. Hudson. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney at Gottesman & Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua, and I'm here representing Stabile Homes at Caldwell Road, which is the owner of the property. With me this evening is Eric Jackson, who's the vice president, and also with me is Ethan Beals of Hayner Swanson, who's the project manager on this project. I think a little bit of history before I get into the request. This property was originally one large lot, and it belonged to the Constant family. This is Mrs. Constant's homestead. If you've ever been out there, you know there are a whole series of duplexes that exist in Anvil, Forge, and Caldwell, and those were all constant, developed, built, and managed over the years. And this was the homestead. And sort of in late 2021, they decided that they would like to try to do a subdivision as they no longer needed the land surrounding it as the homestead. And the subdivision was presented by the Constant family, and Maynard and Paquette was the engineering firm, and it went to the city. And eventually what would happen was three new lots were created. And they were on Forge and on Caldwell and on Lund. And the subdivision, as approved, was then eventually the land other than the homestead, which was kept by the Constants, was sold off, and Stabile purchased it. The time of the plan and the purchase, the sewer was, and driveways, two of them were planned to come off of Lund Road. And all three of these roads are under moratorium currently. So in looking at it, the engineering design was, well, let's try to come off of Forge, because Forge was paved in 2018, and it'll come off of moratorium in October of 2023, which is just around the bend. And the original plan, through discussion with my office, was to come in and ask for a waiver of moratorium about now, maybe a little bit earlier, say in the spring, to get ahead of the curve so that the construction could be done. It wouldn't be during the winter. It's nothing worse than construction and temporary paving in November or December. So that was the original. And we still have two houses that are designed to come off of Forge. So I don't want to bifurcate the request, but understand that it's sort of two different requests. One is for the cutting into Forge, which is coming off the moratorium in this fall in October. And that hardship is simply one of, it will be an expense, but it could be a problem in paving, and it wouldn't be paved necessarily over the winter, and the milling, and all of that would occur after the moratorium expired. So we could wait, I guess, and get into that, but we're trying to get housing for the city, and we're trying to get the pavement done early and expeditiously. So that's the Forge Drive. I think there were plans submitted with the request of application, but I have plans I can pass out if you don't have them. I wasn't quite aware if you had a TV screen or not, but we did email, actually, during the meeting, sent an email to Dan, so if you want to call it up, maybe Dan can do the high-tech end of things. But that's the Forge Drive, the lots coming off of Forge. The pavement reflects it'll be near the intersection all the way down through the two lots, and it would be done in accordance, as the letter says, the 3-foot trench overcut and curb-to-curb overlay of the road 20 feet beyond the disturbed areas on Caldwell and Forge. So Forge is one, and then Caldwell is the other one. Caldwell, admittedly, was paved in May of 2021, and it doesn't come off the moratorium in 2026. So it's a fairly recently paved road. However, this is the last lot on that road. This is a new driveway at the end of the road. So it's not as if we're cutting in the middle of the road. The reason we'd like to do it is when you get out there with all the trenching equipment and the sewer connections and the piping, you don't want to do one and then have to come back years later. We obviously would have an issue with not being able to put the house up for a number of years. It'd be easier if we could all do it. It starts to add to the cost significantly when you delay the construction as would be required here. There was some effort looked at how do you make them all come out on Forge, but nobody likes, including the city, private easements that cut across from one property to another. Topographically, where do you put it? How do you put out the easements? Does it go along the road? Again, there's some issues that, you know, could be resolved perhaps, but at a fairly significant expense. And it's really not in anybody's interest to have easements across property for sewer. So that's the nature of our requests. Ethan's here if you have any technical questions, and that's it.
Anybody? Questions? Comments? Commissioner Moriarty?
Yeah, I guess the comment, if I'm reading this correctly, Attorney, that initially you were having two lots come off Lund, and the engineering redesigned it to take the stress off Lund, which is, I think, a great idea.
correct.
and move it on to Caldwell, I guess? It's gonna have it,
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
So, yeah, I think that's great work there to try and accommodate that, so. And I guess the three houses will be built basically
All at the same-
simultaneously at same time.
That's correct.
And do we know, just offhand, what the market price will be?
Can I ask Mr. Jackson?
Sure.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, Eric Jackson with the Stabile Companies. And we're anticipating pricing probably in the mid-sixes. You know, would like to say lower, but the reality is new construction these days is very, very expensive. Our goal is to have attainable, financially attainable housing here. So this request will play into that and helping to keep the cost of these homes down. But that's what we're targeting.
Oh, that's significant to the city. I mean, three lots, I mean, if, $18 now, 1,000, so 1,800 for $100,000, so you're talking each house, yeah, $10,000, so three houses. I think it's worth it myself.
Other discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, now, we've made the Regional Planning Commission wait for a long time, so we appreciate your patience, but we're now on the pedestrian infrastructure assessment.
Yeah, so Dan Hudson, city engineer. We have a guest here, Ryan Friedman from NRPC, and he is going to take you through the pedestrian. I think I've spoke about it a couple times before, but he's going to take you through the pedestrian infrastructure assessment that we did. The city worked jointly with NRPC to go through this and collect data, and Ryan can kind of explain what was done and what we've learned from that.
Sure. So Ryan Friedman, Senior GIS Planner at NRPC. My appearance here marks the final deliverable, I guess you'd say, of a multi-year, multi-phase, multi-contract project with the city. I will go over everything on the slide in a little more detail, so don't dwell on it too much, but I just put it here to show how long we've been working on these kind of projects with the city back from the before times in 2020, with the end goal and the end product being a complete inventory and assessment of public pedestrian infrastructure and amenities in the city. So back in 2020, we started with a data-driven project to try and identify areas of the city where a pilot program to collect data would be the most beneficial. So to do that, we wanted to identify both areas of need and areas of desire. So we looked at, on the origin end, we looked at where do people live that are most likely to need to use, pedestrian or bicycle-based trips. So where do people live that don't own a car? Where do people that self-report on the census that they commute to work by walking or biking? And other demographic things like income. And then on the destination end, where are some of the places that people are likely to want to get to using their feet or a bike? So, retail and shopping destinations, recreation things like parks, concentrated areas of business. So we combine those two things along with a few other attributes that you see on the left there. Level of traffic stress, or LTS, is kind of a thing I wanted to point out. That's a measure that's been gaining traction nationally over the last few years that takes attributes of the road to try and assign a category of how comfortable it would be for a bicyclist to be on that facility based on its surroundings, how many lanes there are, what the median is like. And so NRPC was part of a statewide effort at the DOT level to code every road in our region, including the city of Nashua, with an LTS score. And those scores range from 1 to 4, and they represent various levels of confidence on a bike. So level 1 would be a road that is appropriate for anyone, including kids of any experience on a bike, all the way up to level 4, which we affectionately call our weekend warriors. So the spandex people out there that don't mind being in the middle of traffic will pretty much bike anywhere. So we took that data, combined it, did some math, and the map on the right was the result of that and showed some hot spots on where all those attributes were overlapping and occurring. So we took that data and we took those areas and we said, okay, obviously, downtown, the tree streets, out towards Exit 5, around Lake Street and Kinsley, were some areas that we wanted to do because the contract that we had at the time only allowed us to zero in and collect the data on a limited amount of mileage of your city. So to collect the data, we used a module called SAIDS. It's developed by the Technology Transfer Center, or T-Squared, at UNH. And it's a suite of software and hardware solutions for mostly asset management type data collection efforts. So there's ones for culvert assessment, and one that lets you look at pavement condition and plot out a course for a budget for paving over the next 10 years or what have you. But the one we concentrated on obviously is pedestrian inventory. So we did some training with UNH and the people up there. And what it entails is using iPads or any other mobile device that you can load up the software on, walking the facilities that you're going to collect data on, and capturing various attributes about it. So the 4 types of facilities that this module includes are the sidewalks themselves, along with the curb ramps, crosswalks, and pedestrian signals. I won't get into every attribute that it collects, but obviously for sidewalks, you're looking at things like slope, width, material, condition. So there's some quantitative assessment you're doing and some qualitative assessment you're doing. So the training told us what to look for in terms of what is good versus fair versus poor. So that's all coded into those roads. Curb ramps, again, you're looking at slope. Are there detectable warnings, the yellow bumpy things on the ramps? Are they clear, does the end of the ramp, when you get to the bottom, is it clear of traffic, that kind of thing. So a lot of these are geared towards answering ADA type questions. For crosswalks, is it well lit? Are there signs for vehicles approaching the crosswalk that a crosswalk is imminent? Is the paint faded? What's the type of striping? The slope again, all that kind of thing. And then on the pedestrian signals and the buttons themselves, we're looking at height of the button, the distance back from the row that it is. So a lot of that was getting at if you are disabled in some way, blind or in a wheelchair or something like that, what is the experience for accessing that button like for you? So all in total, you can see the results of that pilot area that we did. We did 17 linear miles in those hotspot areas. Real simple color coding on this map just to show you that what we found for sidewalk condition. So this is just that one condition attribute of collecting the sidewalks, eyeballing it, looking for cracks, looking for deterioration, things like that. The green is good, the yellow is fair, and the red is poor. And this was done, again, in during and right after that initial phase of COVID, so summer of 2020, fall of 2020. Recognizing that data doesn't tell the whole story, we also wanted to do a little bit of public outreach and get kind of more of the qualitative picture of what people thought of what it's like to walk and bike in the city. So we did a couple outreach efforts. We did an online static survey, of which we got actually 300 responses, which is very good for us. Some of the key highlights there were that on a sliding scale, people tended to put the slider at a below average rating when it comes to how comfortable it is to walk and bike around the city. People called out the lack of connectivity between, the trail system and the sidewalk system is pretty robust in the city, but getting from one cluster to another can sometimes be an issue. So connectivity was highlighted as a big factor. And then the major corridors that, if it's the fastest way to get from A to B on a car, it's probably the fastest way on a bike or on foot also, but doing so along those corridors can be a nightmare. Just the environment that you're in and the amount of traffic. So that was recognized as well. Then we did, following up on the online survey, we did a webinar in the summer of 2020. We had 30 attendees to that. They had similar issues, of course, when we did a little online survey and Q&A with them. They specifically called out some streets, Main Street, Amherst Street, and DW Highway as some of those major corridors that everyone wants to get to destination-wise, and it's a little unfriendly for them. So the final results, or the final deliverables of that initial effort were a written plan that we did, and then a poster. The plan talked about what I just, they introduced all the data collection, gave the results, looked at a few more maps, summarized the survey results. And then we attempted to make some recommendations in conjunction with city staff. Julie at the time, I think, was a big part of that. Some of the categories of recommendations that we wanted to address were wayfinding, so more signs telling people how to make those connections and get from, say, Heritage Trail to Mine Falls or something like that. Multi-use paths, trying to get people out of traffic whenever possible. So to the degree that, the right-of-way and the room allows, try and encourage the installation and use of multi-use paths around the city, and then making those connections from neighborhood to neighborhood. So it's hard to, you're not going to be able to see anything on this, but I just want to show that this is the poster that we made on the left that kind of summarizes. You can see some charts on there that look at the survey results, and then the main map there has, what we did is we took some of the recommendations, the categories that I just showed you, and tried to identify a couple places around the city where each of those recommendations might make sense. So that's the blow up on the right there. You can kind of see we've called out, the need for more crosswalks in that orange circle down there where the new middle school is being built, in anticipation of more walkers down in that area, and with all the trails that are down in that area as well. The big green corridor highlighted there along West Hall Street, obviously, kind of is where we made the case for a multi-use path, coming from Mine Falls in the downtown area out to all the recreational opportunities in the southwest part of the city. So that was step one. The city came back to us. We entered into a contract to complete the assessment for the entire city over the last couple of years. Again, we used the same SAIDS database as the pilot area. This time we pulled in city staff to help us complete the job, and when I say help, they did more than their fair share. They made us look lazy at times. So we had probably 2 or 3 staff members on our end, plus 2 interns, and then an intern and at least 2 or 3 staff members at the city, constantly out there every day during the summer of 2022 into the fall. We thought it would take maybe all spring, summer, fall. We did it in about the 3 months of summer, with teams out there basically every day, walking every public sidewalk in the city. So that was a great effort for everyone involved. So between that pilot area, that was the 17 miles, right when the project was kicking off, we were also engaged in a Safe Routes to School study for Ledge Street, so we kind of used that as a little mini pilot that NRPC tackled, so we did that area next, and then once the summer started and all the interns and the staff came on board, we finished up the city to the tune of about 200 total linear miles. And then I will, for my next trick, try and access the internet. So Tyrell on our GIS staff made this great dashboard that we used while we were collecting the data, and it also functions as kind of a snapshot after the fact of what the city looks like. So like I said, we used this while the project was going on to see where we were, what we've collected. It was updating in real time. Obviously, it also helped us plan out where we went every day, so we didn't run into each other with all the different teams that we had going on out there. But you can see kind of the top level data at the top there, what we collected. A few random attributes that we tried to point out that people could look at as the data was being collected. So this one is about crosswalks and how many are well lit versus not. This one is the condition of curb ramps. So again, that good, fair, poor idea for the curb ramp itself. By the way, this NA 10% usually is a flag for the fact that you would get to the end of a sidewalk and there was no ramp. I know some of those are being addressed as we speak, but most of those, that's the case. Some of them were under construction at the time, so we were going to come back to them. So that's why there's 10% there that are NA. The mouse is a little finicky here, but if you zoom in here, what you can also do on this map is, this is also color-coded by good, fair, poor on a lot of this. Yeah, this is kind of delayed, Dan, but that's all right. You can, if I can get it to work. You can click on a road, or in this case a sidewalk, and get all the attributes. So this is the nitty-gritty of what we collected. So this I happen to click on a crosswalk here. So you can see the type of paint, is it faded, is there a median, and all this stuff is being fed into the database. This, by the way, because it's part of SAIDS, that UNH T-squared effort, is part of a statewide database. So DOT is constantly collecting their assets, so the ramps and the exits and the interstates and the highways are kind of already there. Nashua and Concord and maybe one other city are the only ones right now in the state that are kind of fully fleshed out. And it's usually been the RPCs that are doing that work. So really cool to have Nashua be one of those highlights. Let me see if I can get a sidewalk. Yeah, so who collected it, when it was collected, surface type, condition, what the prominent defect was, so in this case cracks, granite. There's the height of the curb, the minimum passable width. And those of you who have a little background in ADA will know which of these are kind of being flagged for, compliance or not. Here's the slope, so this one's relatively flat, and so on and so on. So this was a great way during the project to keep an update of where we were, and then after the fact just to get a snapshot of what everything looked like. So that wrapped up, like I said, late last summer. And then the last step was, in addition to the module on the iPads, T-Squared also developed a spreadsheet which helps you rank every facility in general terms of how ADA compliant it is. Obviously, you could have a brand new, beautiful sidewalk and the slope is 13%, and that all of a sudden that's not ADA compliant. So tends to be a binary thing for a lot of these attributes, but they combined all these into did some spreadsheet math and gave us the ability to rank them to look at which ones are, maybe a total disaster on the top end versus, perfect on the bottom. So we took that, we ran our data through that spreadsheet, we joined it up with the GIS data and made another dashboard, which looks like this. And again, this is something that DPW staff has access to. We've given them the keys to the car. So this is the table of every sidewalk in this case, and you can toggle back and forth down here. You can see between the three. There is no ADA compliance spreadsheet right now for the signals, so these are the other three sets of attributes. So for each one of these, it's sorted right now by 0, which is the poorest, all the way up to 100, which is an indexed best score possible. So you could theoretically be clicking, look for the worst ones, and if you click on one over here, it takes you to it on the map, or vice versa. If you were to click on one on the map, it should highlight in the table, in addition to bringing this up here. So this is the same data as the dashboard you saw before, just in kind of final format and color-coded by this idea of ranking by, total score. The last thing we did, we had kind of a post-game wrap-up on this project, and the city wanted us to try and do something to address, if we wanted to look at some of these, how do we prioritize? There's nothing in this data that says, 2 sidewalks that have the same score, which one should we look at first, in terms of kind of thinking back to that original idea that we did for the pilot study of which of these are people likely to walk on the most, or which one of these is more important to the overall city's infrastructure or the connections that people might make around the city. So towards the end of this table, there are some columns about whether that segment of sidewalk falls into an area that is, for an example, proximity is different for each of these attributes, but within a half mile of a park, or is it near one of the top, I think, 15% of ridership stops from the transit system? And so those have yes flags on them, so the city can look at different segments around and click on them and see, oh, this one's getting a low score, and there's a yes in every single column. It's obviously very important to our infrastructure. It's likely to be used a lot. It's in an important area in terms of demographics, that kind of thing. Here's one that talks about, is it in a census block that has an abnormally high prevalence of households with no vehicles available, that kind of thing. So that is where we stand right now. And like I said, this was kind of the last outreach piece. And I will take any questions.
I was just wondering, I guess, George Farrell, how will we use this information?
So the next plan for this information is to build a plan for updating our sidewalks, so a transition plan. And I think risk management will be helping us to complete that. And then we'll have to come up with how to fund that transition. So that's the next step. And this is really something that we have to do, that we're going to be required to do to get all of our sidewalks ADA compliant. So. which
And
is
what do
which is
you
gonna
think
be
it,
great.
what do you think it costs per mile to, let's say, a condition of a sidewalk that's rated poor? What do you think the cost of replacement of a mile of that sidewalk costs?
Well, it depends on the width of the sidewalk, it depends on whether it's asphalt or concrete. It depends whether we can use the existing curb, whether the curb needs to be replaced, whether we need to add drainage. So there's a lot of factors that come into play, so.
And I will say,
Yeah.
sorry, the city also has the master copy of the data. So in addition to looking at it holistically with the score, they can also go in and highlight, select and show me everything that's over 8% slope or everything that's less than 60 inches wide or something like that. So if you're looking to tackle, actual attributes along the way, they can do that too.
Yeah, the next phase of this really is to get into the costing part. That's not something NRPC did, but now we have all the data to be able to do that. So as the director was saying, now we know where all our bituminous sidewalk is. Now we know where all our concrete sidewalk is and where there's various issues. So we need to do a lot of data processing to come up with what a reasonable budget would be to maintain this system and fill in the gaps where they exist and that sort of thing. So we have a little bit of work to do to develop the cost part of this. I mean, to the mayor's point, I think planning board right now, in lieu of a sidewalk construction, the rate is $50 per foot is what the developer contributes. That's nowhere near enough. We're looking at, $150 a foot for bituminous, up to probably $300 a foot for concrete sidewalk. So we have to firm up those numbers and do those projections, but it's expensive to make those repairs. A mile of sidewalk is going to be quite a bit of money. We did, I want to say 900 feet or something over on East Hollis a couple of years ago, and that was in the $230,000, $250,000 range, something like that. So it's expensive, but it needs to be done. I mean, the transition plan will identify all the needs, what the cost is to address the needs, and then, we'll have to implement some plan to eventually someday get all those needs addressed as part of that ADA transition plan. So that's future to come, but right now at least we have the data. That was a big missing link that we didn't have.
And do we ever get funding, grant funding for this type of stuff? No.
No, it's tough. I mean,
Yeah,
we've got Lock Street that we've received some grant funding, but it's in terms of getting just grant funding for doing sidewalk work.
Right.
That's tough.
It's tough.
Fine, yeah.
Grant funding is more targeted towards providing new facilities, less for maintenance of existing facilities you have. They expect municipalities to take care of the stuff they already have, But there is funding out there for school areas, Safe Routes to School program, other things. So there is some funding, and we have benefited from that. We did some work over in Charlotte Ave a couple of years ago and other places. So the city is constantly pursuing those type of grants where they're available.
That's a great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, any comments, questions from the commission?
I was wondering about, okay, this is going to show my ignorance. So if I am thinking about ADA compliance, say on, let's say Air Street, which we live near, which is very steep. We're not very steep, but steep enough that it's hard for me to imagine somebody in a wheelchair. How do you assess that?
So ADA compliance people would have a better answer, but that's one of the attributes, I think, where there is a number, right?
Yeah, generally sidewalks have to follow the profile of the road. If the road's
Yeah.
going up a steep road, you don't really have much choice but to have the sidewalk follow that same grade.
Right.
But there are requirements for the cross grade, can't be too steep, and those sorts of things. Ramps, there's maximum grades for ramps, but in the details and stuff, DOT puts out a lot of ramp details. You try to meet the grade, but if you can't do it within 15 feet, you stop at 15 feet, because there has to be some reasonableness to how far you can go. So it's varied, it's complex. You do the best you can to make it as compliant as you can. Full compliance is probably unattainable, but we do it. And we have sidewalks that maybe the cross grade maximum is 2%, but this is a 4%, but the sidewalk otherwise is in good shape. Well, you're probably not going to go rebuild that one because it's passable.
Yeah.
You're going to go rebuild another one that's in disrepair that's not even passable. So those are the types of assessments we have to make in deciding what work to be done.
So if there's somebody who's like who commutes sort of via motorized chair, if they want to say, I take this route everywhere to get to work, whatever, is there an office in the city that they should say, you know, this is really important? Who do they contact?
So they could reach out to us, but also the city does have an ADA compliance officer. It's Ross Dugas in the risk department. Yeah, he's our point person for ADA complaints and that sort of thing. So yeah, let us know. I mean, nothing pains me more than to drive down a road and see somebody riding down the edge of the road in their wheelchair when there's a sidewalk, and I know the only reason I'm not taking it is because, you know, it's better to ride on the side of the road, and that's troubling. So yeah, we do the best we can, but you know, I mean, frankly, more funding is needed in this area to really do a better job. We're doing a good job rebuilding curb ramps as part of the paving program. That's something we added in a couple of years ago, and we're really doing a lot of ramps around the city, so you're going to see an improvement from that. But the in-between segment parts of sidewalks is kind of the portion that we have limited capacity to address currently due to constraints.
Any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very thorough. No question about that. All right, let's go back to the agenda. Director's report?
Right.
Yes, director's report.
The first slide is Sunshine Paving, final paving Tinker Road and Greenfield Drive on June 12th. This is Continental paving Lake Street on July 5th. We have our Fairy Tale Festival coming up Saturday. The weather does not look very good, unfortunately. And this is one of our biggest events, so we are trying to determine what to do. They're not available on Sunday, so we can't have it Sunday, but we're going to try to reschedule if we can.
Does the city own tents, or do you have to rent them like
We'd have to rent them. Yeah. And plus, in wet weather like that, there's thunderstorms planned. We don't want a lot of little kids running around. So we're going to try, even if we have to maybe postpone it to fall. We're looking now at availability. So hopefully, stay tuned for that. Our summer camps and swim lessons are very highly attended again this summer. Most are at capacity. So hundreds of kids are enjoying summer this year. Thousands, again, enjoyed our annual fireworks display that was held a day late. Due to weather again, we've had unprecedented weather, as you all know. The Fields Grove basketball courts are pictured here. You can see only one hoop on the left, and that the court was heavily cracked. Great improvement. There are now 2 baskets, and the court was redone. This is some improvements at Lions Park. We resurfaced the shuffleboard courts this month. They look really great. A lot of people don't know that we have shuffleboard. Yeah. Park and Rec staff have been very busy installing a 14-zone irrigation system and a little over 4,000 linear feet of pipe at Atherton Park. The thunderstorm on July 18th brought 8 different trees down. Pictured here is Artillery Lane.
It didn't bring down the famous tree on Artillery Lane, did it?
No, it didn't.
It's still there.
That's still there. Yeah.
I walked by to kind of see.
This is catch basin repair of bricks and concrete that was caused by erosion. Another rebuild of a failing catch basin on East Pearl. The top coat of asphalt on the basketball court at Atherton Park, another huge improvement. We repaired a sinkhole. There were some stumps that were buried under the road that caused that on Edinburgh Drive. Another sinkhole repaired on Lake Street. There was a broken sewer lateral that was discovered there. Sinkhole repair on Russell Ave. This was from a washout, and the tip down was also replaced on the corner. You can see all the sinkholes here. On Valhalla Street, This was again caused by the volume of water that we've had. Public Works is doing a lot of cleanup of homeless encampments. As Commissioner Lemon knows, this is one that we cleaned on Crown Street. We also received a request to do some cleanup at Mine Falls Park. So we'll be, the Spine Road entrance, so we'll be doing that soon too. I think that was actually done today. Another sinkhole that was caused by water pooling on Tangway Ave. We replaced some deteriorated sidewalks on Bower Street. We mill and filled the Water Street ramp to help preserve the bridge deck. There's new berm that was installed to prevent eroding on Melrose Street. You can see we've been very busy. We removed overgrown brush at Broad and Dublin. Again, washouts from heavy rains are being repaired. This is at Searles Road by Indian Fern Drive. New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services brought their interns to the wastewater facility to tour the energy recovery building. So that was pretty neat. And this is our new dozer at the landfill. Arrived. And the solid waste department, well actually the division, participated in the Green Your Fleet workshop at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. We showcased one of our CNG side load trucks. This is the zigzag wall construction that's being built on phase 3 of the landfill. This, as you recall, is allowing us to be able to eventually cap the landfill, but also gave us some additional space by building this. And the second household hazardous waste collection was held on Thursday, June 1st, and there was a large turnout in spite of the very high temperatures. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions from the commission?
How has the stormwater overflow system that we've been pumping money into, how's that been working?
We've had some overflows, there's no question, but relatively well, honestly, given the amount of water that we've had. It's working as planned, but you know, there's only so much that the collection system can handle in these big, it's just like, we've received so many complaints about flooding on streets. Well, it's just, we have so much pavement here in Nashua, there's no place for the water to go, right? So, but it relatively well. We do have some more work to do in certain areas. We'll have to do some separation to help that. But my hope is that our collection system will work as it's designed, and we'll just be able to do a little more separation in the areas where we're still seeing issues.
Yeah, that at least the bad weather has been diagnostic for picking out problem areas.
True, that's true.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of water.
There has been a lot of water. It's been incredible.
I went to a meeting at the high school Monday night, and it was raining so hard that my feet were totally submerged underwater because it was coming down so fast.
Wow.
And the water was running. I was like, you know, it was weird. It was like being in the tropics because there was so much water on the little path into the high school.
Yeah, it's been an incredible year for that. We've seen a lot of damage caused by it on the water.
All right. Now, there's the director's reports. I don't know, is there anything, or department's reports, sorry, is there anything there?
No, that's just attached.
All right, commissioners' comments. Do any commissioners have comments?
I just have to say the flowers are tremendous this year. I've been really impressed. I mean, they're not dead. You know, well, it's all the rain, but also they look really nice, and people have commented to me on how nice it looks.
Thank you. I will mention that to Brian Connie. He's very proud of the work, and I agree. Definitely an upgrade this year, and they're getting better and better. So.
Yeah, and I hear there was tons of grieving over the fall of the tree in Grilly Park. The big specimen tree that got just collapsed. Not, maybe it was the July 18th storm. It was all over Facebook. People were like, that was my favorite tree.
When you said grievance,
one
I
was
thought,
that?
I thought you meant grievance, union grievance.
The one
Yeah,
that they
I
go
I
to
wasn't aware of that.
down?
But yes,
Down?
yes.
Yeah, the weeping one, right? It's the one that went.
You know, I'm not sure. I know we did have a tree come down.
Yeah,
It split, yeah. But, yeah.
people were really upset, and I haven't been walking over there yet, so.
All right. Well, personnel is our next area. Item A is Commissioner Shoneman.
I
Thanks for coming.
move to
Oh.
approve. I move to approve and unseal the non-public minutes for personnel from Board of Public Works meeting of June 22nd, 2023.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item B, Commissioner Lemon.
Motion is to accept the letter of retirement of Richard Davis, groundsman 2, effective July 17th, 2023.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to accept the letter of resignation of Ryan Loans, groundskeeper maintenance, effective July 24th, 2023.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Non-public session, Commissioner Moriarty.
I move by roll call that the board go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A3, Roman numeral 2B, the hiring of any person as a public employee.
Does that need to be roll call?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. All right, we're going to go into non-public session. All right, we're back into public session. I don't think we have any other business to transact.
I have a motion.
Oh, yes, we have one item. Commissioner Moriarty.
I move by roll call to seal the minutes of the Board of Public Works Personnel Non-Public Meeting of July 27th, 2023, until such time as the majority of the board votes that the purpose of the confidentiality will no longer be served.
All right, you heard the motion. All those, roll call. Could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. So the motion passes. So now we will turn to Commissioner Moriarty.
Thank you. I move that we adjourn the meeting, Mayor.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, and the meeting of the Board of Public Works is adjourned at 5:36 p.m.